channel. What we're going to do today is we're going to do the intro portion of the part 2 of the salvage title Corvette rebuild. I hate saying salvage title because it makes it sound like it's a bad car. It's not a bad car, it just needs some love. And so we're going to do the rear shocks, but I wanted to kind of back up a little bit because actually that's all already been done at this point, but I wanted to back up and do a little bit of a better explanation so that hopefully I could help people out, because there was a question that was raised after part 1 of what exactly can we see a hands-on of the zip tie method, what it is, what we're doing, and why. And so I want to start with a little bit more of an explanation of a shock absorber. This is kind of an up close. This is one of the rear shocks that we pulled out. And with a shock absorber, you have the top, this nut here goes to the bracket that it bolts to the car, and it bolts into the frame, and then the shaft that's in this nut goes all the way down, and inside here, inside the body, it's a round disc. The shaft goes in, it tightens, there's another nut in there that it bolts together with, and now that's called the valve. And this is the valve body in this part of the shock. Now this valve allows the oil that's inside of the shock to move back and forth between the bottom and the top of the shock at different rates. And so, you know, some of the shocks that you might see out there have variable rates or things like that. You can change a knob and adjust the rate of the shock, or in the cases of my Grand Sport, it has a magnetic ride, and so there's, from what I gather, it's molybdenum is part of the material that's inside the shock oil, and when it's energized, it changes that that metal, because it's a magnetic, it reacts to the magnetic force, and so basically it changes it from just a free floating, puts it on end, and so that changes the valve rate, and so it stiffens the suspension up a little bit. So anyway, that said, this shaft here, I wish we could see it better from in here, but underneath this boot, the shaft just runs down, and the top of the valve body is right up in here, but there's seals and stuff here to keep all the road debris and everything else off the upper portion of that shaft. So anyway, and so with the shock, they're really, really difficult, as you can see that, to compress it down. And now when you're replacing the shocks, it's still going to rebound back out. And so when you replace the shock, you use the zip tie method. It's an easy way to do it, to compress the shock so that it's a shorter length to maneuver it around to get it in and out of where it needs to mount. And so that's what we're talking about. I'm going to go ahead and show the zip tie method real quick, not get real crazy with it, but I wanted to make sure that it was clear for everyone so they understood what we were doing and why we were doing it. So kind of a neat deal. But anyway, let's go ahead and do this. I've got the 2 zip ties. I'm going to put these 2 zip ties around the top side of the shock, and when I get these tied together, I'll bring it up and show you what I've done. I'm going to pull them up so that you still have room, and because of the length of my the big zip tie here, I'm going to put another loop of zip ties there and there. And I still don't think it's enough to just run this. It might just be to run it around. And so that's what we're going to do with it. Okay, I'm going to bring it over so that you can see what I've done. And so basically you put the zip tie up around the top side here so that it has something to grab onto. I put another pair of zip ties just to give it a little bit more length. Now if you don't have a bigger zip tie like this one here, you can just put another set of zip ties around the bottom of it and do it that way. And so, but now because of how long this is extended, we want to go ahead and put some force on it. And so now, as you can see, the shock is a lot shorter than it was. Now, once you get it maneuvered up into place in the body of the car, you'll bolt one end or the other. I'll talk about this when I'm doing the work, but this part on the bottom here, there's a bolt that goes through here that it's on the lower control arm of the suspension that holds it in place. And so I bolted the top up first because it's the most difficult to get to. And then once I release the zip ties, the shock extends down, and then I put the bolt through here and bolt it all up. This is an easier part of the suspension to access, or the part of the shock to access. So, all right. So here's what happens with the shock. Let me back up so we can watch it. And you see how the shock expanded down a little bit? Sometimes they can go a little bit faster, but they're coming down under a pretty good deal of force. And so that's why it's kind of one of those things that makes it easier to use the zip ties to get the shocks in there. So there's that, and hope you enjoy the video. Should be fun, and it should be at least entertaining, if not providing a little bit of useful information. So don't be afraid to give it a shot yourself. Really doesn't require a lot of tools, and what I'm using is hand tools, so most people should be able to do it. The beauty of it is, if my video doesn't help what you're doing for your particular application, YouTube, somebody has probably done a video on it. So anyway, there we go. Should be fun. You'll see the footage, and we'll get this one done. Let's get to work. Anyway, there we go. That bolt right there, that's the bottom bolt for the shock. And so I went ahead and squirted it with some penetrating oil. So we're going to let it sit for a few minutes, soak in there a little bit, and then we'll knock that thing loose and hopefully pull it apart. And then once we do that, we're going to move to up here on the top. Let me see if I can get this into where we can kind of see it. Yeah, there we go. These bolts right here, that's the top of the shock mount, and there's another one back in there. So we'll take both of those out, and they just mount to this bracket up underneath here. So take both of those out, take that one out. We'll compress the shock down like we did before. We're going to still use the same method that we did before, just because it's so much easier to get it in and out. We'll go ahead and compress it down. Probably start bolting this one first, because this one on the bottom side is a little bit easier to access, and if push came to shove and we have to use a pry bar or something down on the bottom to get the shock in place and be able to bolt it up, then that'll work. But it's a little bit easier to get a hold of from down there. So, all right, let's go ahead and get readjusted and get this stuff taken apart. Should be a pretty simple process. I don't imagine it will take more than a few minutes, so hopefully it goes that easy in reality. All right, try to do the best I can so you can see what's going on. Pull this top bolt out first. Nope, ball joint. There we go. So that sucker moved. Okay, now. All right. Okay, so now I'm gonna go grab the zip ties. We're going to do that again.
light, which probably doesn't help the camera angles a whole lot. Come on now. Tell you what, the problem that I'm running into is I didn't get the tabs in a place that makes them real easy to get to, doing them one-handed. There we go. Now find a way to get this thing out of here. All right. There we go. One remove shock absorber, and it's even kind of got a little bit of a handle with it. So, okay, we've gone ahead and zip tied this one up, and now we're going to slide it back in place. Get this show on the road. And I did have to shorten it up because it wasn't going to give me the room that I needed without doing that. So. So we got to turn the shock a little bit so that it pops down on there. Because this fork right here, make sure you can see that, that's on the shock, has to land over that hole right there. And the shock's going to kind of try to make its way out of there as quick as it can. So I've got the side cutters, and I'm gonna, so it's in place, but I do need to go up just a little bit more. So I think I'm gonna do is put a screwdriver in the other side. See if I can use that as a little bit of leverage. Just like that, in it goes. And now, here's where that nut, wherever, you can't see it, the one that we took off of there anyway, we are going to put it back on there. Anyway, I went ahead and pulled out the torque wrench, torqued it down to 100 foot-pounds. I found on the internet there was a couple of different, there was some competing information, and 100 foot-pounds is probably plenty for that, so that's what I went with. Now I just got to torque down the top bolts that hold the top of it in, and the shock is done. So that should be that. Really pretty simple. The biggest issue is just kind of getting it in the air and then working your way around there and figuring out for sure what fits and what doesn't fit, to as far as extensions and sockets and whatnot, to get the different bolts. But really a pretty easy process, start to finish, probably half an hour, 45 minutes once you have the car up in the air. So other than that, that should be about it. Everything is good. So let me tighten this up and button it all up, and then we'll have a talk.
All right, everyone. That's it for today's video. Hopefully the content you might find useful, or at least entertaining a little bit. Trying to do the best I can. Shocks are shocks are shocks. Don't be afraid to give it a try if you have basic hand tools and a little bit of mechanical ability or knowledge. Also, the most important part about projects like this is safety. Make sure that if you have your vehicle up in the air, that you have it supported on a proper jack stand or a proper lift or a proper piece of equipment that's intended for holding the vehicle up in the air. Bumper jacks or scissor jacks or wood blocks or cinder blocks. Not the best thing to use. You don't want these things collapsing and hurting or killing you. At least I don't. So be safe, pay attention, have fun, but have fun the right way. So anyway, I appreciate everyone watching, and if you have not already done so, please hit that subscribe button. If you liked the video, hit the like button, and if you want to see more, hit that little bell icon and turn on your notifications, so when I put out something new, then you'll get notified that it's out there so you can go out and watch it. Appreciate it. Again, thanks for watching Yellow Jacket Garage, and we'll see you on down the road.